Okay, welcome back to Within Reason with Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin. This is a great suggestion. Warren Buffett claims that he could end the deficit in 5 minutes. And I agree with him, and I think you will too. Here's what he said, told CNBC. You just pass a law that says anytime there is a deficit of more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. Problem solved.
Excellent point.
Now, this didn't come from Warren Buffett, but why don't we insist on these things? We're not watching our politicians. Here's a Constitutional Reform Act of 2012. This is for everybody in our Senate and House of Representatives. No tenure, no pension. Congresswoman collects a salary while in office and receives no pay while out of office. Congress, past, present, and future, participates in Social Security like the rest of us. All the funds in the Congressional Retirement Fund move to the Social Security system immediately. All future funds flow into the Social Security system, and Congress participates just like everybody else. They can purchase their own retirement plan if they want to, just like you can. They can no longer vote themselves a pay raise. Pay will rise by the lower of the CPI or 3%. They lose their current health care system, which is a Cadillac system. Whatever the system is for the rest of America, Obamacare, you got it. You passed it. You like it.
I agree with everything you've said so far.
Congress they pass laws about discrimination and hiring practices, but it doesn't apply to them.
They do it all.
Yeah. Congress must equally abide by all laws they impose on the American people. This would be kind of hard. I think this may be a little unconstitutional. All contracts with past and present congressmen, congresswomen are void effective now. The American people did not make this contract with congressmen and congresswomen. They made it with themselves. That's it. It's supposed to be, the way it was designed, it was supposed to be citizens serving their government and going home, like George Washington did. Yeah. Not these permanent people enriching themselves with ethical rules that would be intolerable anywhere else.
I agree. I want to ask you about another thing that I haven't warned you about.
It's okay.
I want your position on the Petraeus-Allen fiasco.
Oh. Well, I don't know enough about it.
Well, do you think that when General Allen was commanding the troops in Afghanistan, he should have sent 15,000 emails to his girlfriend? Do you think that was probably a good idea or a bad idea?
Maybe they were short emails. I don't. He's a Marine. I don't know.
He's giving us short emails.
Maybe a lot of those emails were just out of office messages.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about the chick in Tampa who's throwing the big drunken drinking parties?
Here's something, and we're talking about this Kelly lady.
Yeah.
And see, when somebody is described as a socialite, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
I'm a socialite. Yeah. That means, I guess I'm a bimbo with some money who throws parties or something, because that's apparently what she is.
Doesn't it suggest to they had bad taste?
Socialite.
Based on what I'm seeing, it's just these people are a little rough, aren't
they?
I mean, not how they look. I'm just saying their whole persona's a little bit sketchy, right? Yeah. Just a little sketchy. Yeah, and really. now, Mrs. Petraeus is saying, but you don't know the stresses of our men in uniform.
Oh, good grief.
Really?
That's
what's going on.
Well, I know that some of the stresses about the guys in the foxholes, that's pretty bad.
Amen.
I know there are lots of stresses on the generals, but...
Yeah, it's mostly writing reports.
They can... Well, there are a lot of stresses. I mean, they're responsible for all these people who are getting killed, and they've got to somehow take the Afghans, whose interests are completely different than ours, and mold them into something that we want.
How could Allen be writing all these emails to his girlfriend? I mean, or to some chick or something?
A socialite.
What is this about?
I don't know.
And he's got people whose lives depend on. Well, then we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think we talked about it.
And over what period of time are 15,000 emails?
In a year. In a year.
That's a lot.
Well, it seems to be a fair number in a year. Yeah. I mean, most of us don't get that, and we don't want to beat this subject to death. But to say now that the reason Petraeus is involved in this bizarre stuff that he and Allen are involved in, and perhaps other generals, it's not just about sexual activity. It's irrelevant. Now we're explaining this complete breach of national security from the standpoint of saying that they're under stress. Well, they need to resign. I mean, you don't breach the national trust.
That's not a good excuse.
It's not a good excuse.
They behaved badly because they were under stress. Well, most people who behave badly are under stress. That's not an excuse.
I've not read this. I've just read portions of this new book, The Generals, and we'll have a report on that. But in essence, the author says there's no such thing as firing anybody anymore, that they just rise through the ranks.
Right. And it used to be in World War II, who was it? Marshall. If you weren't performing, he'd fire you. They had a good system in Russia. If you lost a battle, you got killed. They shot him.
They shot him. Okay.
Stalin's motto was no man, no problem.
All right, the Republicans have a great plan now. This is the shallow, dim-witted Republican Party leaders. This is what their plan is. Their plan is, let's get a token Hispanic and pretend like we care. And then what we're going to get? We'll get Rubio. Well, listen, you ding-dongs. Rubio carries with him a suitcase full of problems, to say nothing of his exaggerated parents leaving Castro. Here's the problem. Rubio represents the personification of the discrimination in the Latin community in favor of the Cubans and opposed to all other Latinos. All others. Who's in it up to their neck? Jeb Bush. Who do they say is the moderate that should lead the Republican Party and bring the Hispanics back in? Jeb Bush. Well, that ain't going to work, okay? Rubio's not the guy to do it, because in the Latin community, they know the discrimination against everybody who's not Cuban. They know it. They understand it. They don't like it. And they are not going to all of a sudden think the Republicans care for them deeply, okay? But they're going to have to do immigration reform. They're going to have to do it.
The scheme must have, I mean, it used to be great for the Republicans. They'd give the Miami Cubans anything they want. Right. They would vote Republican, and everybody was happy.
And they brought in a new wave of Cubans every year on fast-track residency and fast-track citizenship, plugged them right in.
Wet foot, dry foot, immediately you're entitled to all kinds of stuff. And
1 year fast-track for permanent residency and 3 years fast-track for citizenship.
Right. And if you come across from Mexico, it's a whole different deal.
Oh, my goodness. Are you kidding me? That's only good enough to pick tomatoes and then deport you. I mean, so the discrimination against all other Latin communities, the Republican Party, they need to dial in and kind of figure out where they're going with this, because the simplistic solution, I heard it on Sean Hannity, well, I'm for immigration reform, let these people stay and everything. Well, I'll tell you, before the election, they were saying, ship them all out, okay? Break up families, take the kids.
That's what happens in elections, you know? You've got to compete in the public sphere.
You do.
And McCain and Bush were Republicans who were pretty reasonable about immigration. I mean, they couldn't use the amnesty word, and they couldn't, you know, say people, they didn't want to be accused
Bush was reasonable.
But they had a pretty reasonable program, which is, the only reasonable program is some kind of path to citizenship. And we really ought to, I really kind of like the DREAM Act, although there's some arguments against it. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I mean, children who were brought here as infants and have been raised in America and they're as American as anybody else, they shouldn't be punished because they didn't do anything wrong. You know, let them go to college, and if, you know, give them some requirement. You finish college or you serve in the military, you're an American citizen, congratulations, which is a lot more than most of us had to do to be American citizens. All we had to do was be born here.
Just be born. Do you know that George W. Bush deported fewer people than Obama?
Oh, really?
Obama deported a substantial number more than George W. Bush did. There was a moderate kind of wing of the Republican, or component of the Republican Party on immigration, but they got drummed out by these people that are just so extreme. And as Bill pointed out, unless you swing so far right, you can't buy into the Republican primary process. You can't do it. They've got to change it. They just have to change it.
I mean, look at the people lined up there. Good grief.
Then they have to swing so far right, they can't swing back to the middle. So what? And Bill, I think, made a good comment about Romney. He's a decent guy, but now he's persona non grata in the Republican Party. have you seen it? The leadership, they're turning their backs on him. They're saying he's
criticizing
made inexcusable comments about gifts and this and that and the other thing. This was their stalwart. This was their leader. So who are they left with?
I still think he's a good
Sarah
guy.
Palin.
And boy, you know, Romney would have solved problems in a non-ideological way. That ship has sailed. The voters have spoken. We accept the results of a democracy. We've had very little good to say about W over the years, but
let's not change that now.
He was, in a sense, he really had no animus toward black people or Hispanic people. He'd
drink
really,
with them all.
Yeah. I mean, he really would. Look at his cabinet and look at the way he behaved. He really didn't have, on a personal level, he didn't have a discriminatory bone in his body. He just
what a
really
wonderful thing to say.
Well, it's pretty good. It's something good to say about
Forrest Gump was that way. I mean, you got a lot of people that could probably claim that. He was just dumber than a post, don't you think, really? I mean, he couldn't talk. Really, he just, I wouldn't say dumb. He wasn't dumb. He just wasn't very bright. But neither is Jeb. I mean, you know, the whole family's a little slow. Their dad was really a smart guy. He was a great...
There was a lot to like about him.
He was
For
a
openers,
smart
he
guy.
was a war hero.
He was.
And W found his way to the National Guard, where he missed all the meetings, but it kind of worked out for him.
He did.
Yeah.
And all the boys fell towards Mom's tree. Okay, they didn't fall near Dad's tree. They fell right near Big Barbara's tree. Okay, the bushy-headed Barbara, right near her tree. Famous quote, of course, to the people in the Superdome. These people have a lot better situation than they used to have with their homes. That was one of her comments as she strolled through there. Well, that's a famous quote for her. And W said as he flew at 42,000 feet over New Orleans, these people, it looks like it's worse than normal down there. That's what we had for him. All right, what else?
Doing a heck of a job.
Well, when you hire incompetent people that are old college buddies and stuff, that's what you end up with. And now, when you wanted to say something nice about him, so the nice thing you said about him was he
wasn't a racist.
I think, let me write that down because I think that's a good point. He was not. But do you have anything else on him today? Or is that it?
Well, he didn't have token black people in his cabinet.
No,
he had leaders.
I understand
who were
that.
African Americans in his cabinet.
I think that's fine.
Secretary of State.
I mean, he did. He's one of the outstanding people you ever put in office. He just put him under the bus in the UN. That's all he did with that. Okay. He said, like, you're going to the UN, and here's what you're going to tell him. But now, could you give me anything else on him that you think is favorable? Because we want to give him his fair credit. I think I need a very small.
Well, actually,
a very short list here, probably.
No, that's pretty much my
that
list.
It?
I mean, he wasn't a conservative.
Okay, I think
he governed like a crony capitalist.
He did.
So that ought to play well in Escambia County.
Well, but no, wait, that's not a compliment. I'm asking you. Yeah, I'm asking you.
No, I'm trying to think of one.
Can you think of anything else?
No, I mean
he had a good sense of humor. I think he did.
He did. The optional wars.
You'd have to be married to her.
That was a bit of a mistake.
Well, we're not dealing with mistakes. The mistakes will take the whole friggin' hour. I'm just asking anything positive.
Well, I'm just kind of running through things and trying to.
Yeah. Well.
Think of something.
Good luck. He took a lot of vacations, right?
Yeah.
Set a record for vacations because he really didn't want to be in Washington. I really think he didn't want to be president, to tell you the truth. I mean, he really wanted Dick Cheney to be president.
Dick Cheney was president.
I was going to say for a good bit of time.
Yeah, no, I can't. And it's, we're doing this on short notice. I could probably think of something good about him. I always maintained that he wasn't a proper Republican. He was against gay marriage and abortion. That should not be the total definition of the Republican Party.
Will you send me an email if you think of anything?
Yeah, we'll get right on it.
And any of you that think that you have something positive that he contributed to the country.
See, you're alienating more people because there are still people driving around on the back of their SUVs with the big W.
I know they are.
Scrape it off. Those elections are over.
Yeah.
You know?
That could stand for washed out, wimp. We have a lot of W terms that we could do. But in any event, I still see, what was it? Nixon and who? Nixon and Agnew, right?
Nixon Agnew was his vice president.
Some of these people around here still have those.
Spiro Agnew was like some ward hero. He was taking $1,500 bribes in the White House.
In an envelope.
Wasn't good.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, the vice president of the United States, Spud, right?
But Nixon was your kind of guy.
What do you mean, my kind of guy?
Nixon was for price controls, and Nixon did a lot of real liberal kind of stuff.
He went to China.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Republicans had a fit when he did that. He did some interesting things.
He did some interesting
Truly,
things. And he was a smart guy.
If he wasn't a criminal, he would have been a great president.
Some of the stuff he did, though. Do you remember he did wage and price controls?
He did wage and price controls.
Which never works.
It hardly ever does work. He wasn't a conservative, though. In those days,
no, he wasn't a conservative.
We didn't mix this all up in those days. Now it's you're over here, you're over here.
In those days, the Republican Party was Barry Goldwater, who, despite how badly vilified he was a good guy, and I really liked his policies. And Barry Goldwater didn't have 2 seconds for the religious right.
He did not.
He told him to go to hell.
He did not. Yeah.
And when they wanted to talk about abortion, he said, that's not the federal government's business.
I think it might have been my first presidential election. I can't remember. I voted for Barry Goldwater. You might be surprised to hear that. I did, yeah. That was before I started reading books and things and left the Republicans to go do some other things. No, he didn't win.
Well, now you ought to read John Stuart Mill and, read some of the Enlightenment people and understand how the nanny state, here's what's wrong. I mean,
you got a minute to finish this up.
I got a minute. Let me take about
1 minute and it's over.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Something built in our heart is this longing for community. We're all in it together. A shared struggle and shared victories and shared losses. But when it's applied by our government, what it's about is them doing compulsory things and subject to all the waste and fraud by our politicians. That's what's wrong with it. And that. Now, I've run you completely out of time, so you can't respond.
I can't respond because I think it was a good way to conclude the program tonight. Okay. And we welcome your comments and emails and suggestions for the program. We will completely disregard them most likely, but you feel free to send them. Thank you very much.
Them.
Thank you. Yeah, we do read them. Thank you very much for watching us tonight, and we hope you'll be back with us again. Good night.
Good night.